producer of. $3.5 million was the first order, approximately. Subsequent millions came in after the virus broke out, of course. How convenient. All of this is a royal scam, and you can see who's perpetrating it when you begin to see this whole system dynamics flow chart of the organizations involved. Now, the only other thing I have to cover that's really important is the Battelle Memorial Institute, West Jefferson, Ohio. In fact, it was our lead from our office that actually got the mainstream media to cover this, and that on December 11th, Monday morning, December 11th, 2001, I called William Broad from the New York Times, who was the anthrax reporter for the New York Times following the anthrax mailings. And I said, Bill, I've just sent you and 8,500 other mainstream members, mainstream press media people, a definitive report exposing the Battelle Memorial Institute, West Jefferson, Ohio, as the premier source for that anthrax that was mailed, and the individuals who worked with them, who are the chief suspects in the anthrax mailings. I said to him, can't you do something about Battelle in any of your New York Times articles? And his quote to me is, yeah, it seems all roads lead to Battelle, don't they? End quote. He was working at that very moment on an article. His article came out 2 days later, on December 13th. You can check it out, New York Times, 2001, wherein he shared his last 2 paragraphs, which was basically what I had told him, and he had additional evidence of. He says that it was the Battelle Memorial Institute that was under top secret CIA contract. He called it Clear Vision. Project Clear Vision, Pentagon officials called Project Jefferson because it came from West Jefferson, Ohio. Battelle Memorial Institute is largely directed by the British oligarchy and the United States Department of Energy. Look on their website. It lays out the U.S. Department of Energy connections intimately. They are a one-stop shopping center for anything military, anything population control, including weather changing and biochip medical biotechnologies. Everything that's going down on this planet right now, you can bet your booties that Battelle had something to do with, or their people did, in terms of the science and the research. And so the anthrax that was mailed, why do I know it came from Battelle? Here's why. And or their people, here's why. Because it never existed on this planet. Nothing like it has ever, and may never. It was a hyper-weaponized AIM strain. Hyper-weaponized to the tune of 1 trillion spores per gram. It was electromagnetized. It was cut with silica so that it would spread easier. The fact of the matter is, the best thing that the Russians, during their heyday at biopreparat, ever produced was an anthrax that had about half as concentrated, 500 million. This was 1 trillion spores per gram. And that the chief expert under CIA contract and Battelle contract, both simultaneously, of America, his name was William Patrick III, he wrote a report on what would happen if such an anthrax as this was mailed over 1.5 years before the mailing. Now, he's a chief suspect, not Stephen Hatfield. Moreover, an additional chief suspect was a Russian fellow by the name of Ken Alabakov, who worked not only with the CIA but also Battelle and also Hadron Corporation, which in the next segment, as we complete this presentation, you will see are also involved or implicated. So Dynacorp and Hadron are implicated in the anthrax mailings. And I draw on the fine work of Michael Rupert, who has brought to the floor the suspect that I had at the top of my list, along with William Patrick III, who is America's leading anthrax expert, the Russians' leading anthrax expert. His name is Ken Alabakov, or Kenatjan Alabakov, alias Ken Alabak, who defected to the United States in the perfect time to be a chief propagandist on behalf of the Central Intelligence Agency in this entire field of bioterrorism. He's one of the leading spokespersons. Now, get this. This Russian defector, leading anthrax developer, had a contract also with Battelle, had a contract with the CIA, and at the same time had a contract with Hadron Corporation, with Dynacorp, Mike Rupert links to the deaths of the missing microbiologists, the murders of the missing microbiologists through the software that they have developed. Now, Dynaport, see, Dynacorp, Dynaport, Bioport, ultimately they're all connected once again to the British oligarchy. So again, you've got a standard scam operating here, and your list of suspects is small. That's why I feel most certainly the CIA has been blocking the FBI's investigation, if the FBI and Robert Mueller is not himself blocking it. Now, Aventis, let me go into the manufacturers now. Let's get into the smallpox vaccine. Nothing makes sense about this particular vaccine, as you'll see in a minute. It doesn't make sense that we would be even considering injecting the populations, anyone, with this particular vaccine. Let me give you some background. In 2001, Aventis, which is now in control of Oravax Acambis, which I told you was Dr. Monath's organization that produced the West Nile virus and the West Nile virus scam, will produce, it said, this is according to the sites that I've given you in the article that is posted on our website. They said that they will produce enough smallpox vaccine for the federal government's large order, the media reported. And this fulfilled Bioport. Now again, Bioport is anthrax, but it fulfilled Bioport's chief operating officer Robert Myers' recommendations to the United States Congress that his company and at least one other, Aventis, be able to produce critical anthrax and smallpox vaccines. But this was several years before this became an urgency or even a mailing, fright or problem, or September. All of this predates by several years. The Aventis Acambis 20-year contract awarded by the Centers for Disease Control is worth approximately $343 million for a 40 million dose stockpile. Now, that's according to media reports. Critics contend that the smallpox vaccine has already been determined to be mutagenic, that is carcinogenic, that is cancer-causing. This is based on a 1980 issue of Mutation Research showing that children revaccinated against smallpox had chromosomal aberrations in their white blood cells. Now, June 20th, my birthday, 2002, Lawrence Altman, who's the medical deity, the propaganda minister over AIDS over the United States and for the reporting for the New York Times, their medical doctor, he reported that a government panel, now this shows you a complete charade. He reported on my birthday, June 20th, that the government panel, the CDC's ACIP committee, that's Immunization Practices Committee, rejects the proposal to immunize large populations against smallpox. Experts stated, now this was after I, along with thousands of healthcare professionals, contacted the CDC and told them that we were opposed to the mass vaccination program for smallpox and the reasons why. This information also is posted on the tetrahedron.org website. You can see my personal letter to CDC. They concluded from that avalanche of negative concerns, they said, well, no, on June 20th, they said we're not going to inject anyone except for perhaps 15,000 frontline military and emergency response personnel at highest risks for exposure. Those people may be exposed to smallpox, and they should be vaccinated. Okay, I was against that, but here's what happened literally the next day. Altman, again, in the New York Times, the very next day, says, the federal government officials raise ethical concerns regarding those 15,000 first responders and others who might be exposed to their shedding viruses. Now, that means that if you inject 15,000 people with a smallpox vaccine, which contains live vaccinia virus, they